Well, good morning. Welcome to Agenda Review for Wednesday, February 7th, 2024. Several people that are joining us on Zoom today. Commissioner Howell is out of pocket, won't be with us today, neither will Manager Stoltz. So in his stead is Deputy County Manager Tim Coffin. Mr. Coffin, would you like to walk us through the agenda?
Absolutely. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Nicole, do you want to go ahead and talk about the county announcements?
Yes, good morning. On the agenda for county announcements, we'll have the clerk at the meeting to talk about homestead refunds. He'll be able to answer any questions. I will also bring up the KDAD's town hall for the mental health hospital that's coming up this month. And then we have finance good news, and that's all I have.
Thanks. Minutes from a couple of meetings, then we've got a proclamation regarding Mental Health Awareness Day. And then we get into the regular agenda. There's an appointment. There are 5 different appointments appointing various commissioners to boards. And next, we've got that bond sale that we've talked a little bit about last week, and we'll talk more about it. I think Lindsay's online if there are any questions. We have the park use agreement from last meeting back. I've worked with the promoter, and we have a fire clause in there that will hold the county harmless in terms of costs related to fire district. The requirement is that they develop a plan that the fire chief signs off on. So we've got that in place as well. And I would also point out that in the contract is item number 24, which talks about oversight of the acts, and the commission does have review rights within that contract. It's already in there.
Any questions from any of us on that? Go ahead, Commissioner Dennis.
As far as the last item that you mentioned, are we going to expand that in the contract?
I'll let Justin speak to it. I think it covers what we intended.
There is, but Commissioner, I may talk to you outside the meeting about that question specifically, if that's okay.
Okay. Do the other commissioners know what the concern is?
To the extent we've talked to the other commissioners, I think we still need to talk to 2 more actually. So, yeah, thank you.
Next item is conditional use that we saw. Scott's here if there are questions regarding that.
Is this is the conditional use on the event center from last week or last BOCC meeting 2 weeks ago? Okay, Commissioner Dennis is District 3. Any specific questions?
Do we have some wording that we can use?
Yes, sir. As to the wording, so what's happened is we have met with the applicant. Staff met first, had a staff meeting to consider it, and then we met with the applicant. And we do have some conditions. We do not have them incorporated into the staff report. We've got briefings on Monday, and I'm working with staff to get a revised staff report submitted. So we'll see how that works out. But in any case, we will have something in writing for you to review and discuss. And I can send that along to you if you'd like that ahead of the briefings as well.
Will you brief us? It's fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with waiting.
I don't know what we do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Scott. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Item H is a resolution to establish Sedgwick County Emergency Communications Advisory Board and all of the requirements in there. We'll see the presentation of the quarterly financial report. Then you'll get an American Rescue Plan Act and ARPA funding spending plan from Lindsay. And finally, on regular items will be the report of boards and bids and contracts.
Busy day for new business, huh?
It is. And then as we move into the consent agenda, we've got L&M or a couple of right-of-way easements, and the first one is about a $1,700 or an $1,800 fiscal note, and the other one is about $13,000. Item N is a series of contracts for senior centers, and Annette had sent you a note about that yesterday. Item O reallocates some funding within the corrections budget, which allows for them to contract with a food service provider and shifting some money from salaries and commodities because staff were performing that duty, and they're going to have an external vendor do that work. Item P is going to be moved to the fire district agenda. It's a lease agreement for a fire apparatus, but it seems more appropriate on that fire agenda. Q, amends the fee structure for ISOs as it relates to the Veterans Court. It sets up the fee structure for the Veterans Court to implement the Veterans Court. There is on R, it's a resolution that revises, there's a technical revision in the investment policy. Lindsay's on if you've got questions about that as well. And then there's position reclassifications and then routine business through W. And I think Tanya's not available today, but Justin had a legislative issue that he wanted to mention.
And I can mention that after the legislative review is completed. That would be preferable, but I'm trying to do that.
Routine on the contract or on the agenda the rest of the way.
And do we have executive session?
Yes, we do.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Any questions on any of the agenda for next Wednesday? Anybody online? Questions, comments? It's like it's gonna be a pretty busy day. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else to add, or Justin, would you?
Sure. And I'm going to pass out Commissioner Beatty. Again, I'm pinch hitting for Tanya Cole here a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
It's a 2-page bill, Senate Bill 346. This is a bill that deals with planning and zoning, so it's convenient. Your planning director is also here. This bill proposes to amend, and part of the reason I'm reaching out is Jason Watkins had reached out to staff about this bill and thought that the commission may at least want to look into it or be aware of it. It proposes to amend KSA 12-757. That's the statute that deals with both setting up a zoning code and making amendments to the zoning text change, but it also deals with, it's the same statute that deals with if you're changing the zoning for a specific property. So the same statute does both things and is used in both contexts. The way that this bill is drafted is currently, if we're talking about a particular property, the zoning is typically changed by the property owner 99% of the time. But there is an ability under state law and under our zoning code for the government, the city or the county within their respective jurisdictions to initiate a zoning change to a property. An example of when the county would have done this, and the only one I can really think of is, for example, when we did countywide zoning in 1985, we had to use a prior version of this statute to do that. But it's not something that's done very commonly in Sedgwick County. But this statute would make it to where only the property owner could initiate a zoning change to the property and government could not do that. The concern that was relayed by Mr. Watkins and also mentioned to some degree by the KEC input on this within the fiscal note on this is that there was some concern that this could hinder economic development when there may be an interest in rezoning a chunk of property. Again, I can't think of any time, that I've been here that the county's done this. But it is an option currently under state law. And I've also talked with Scott Wadle some, and I think he has some concerns. And if you have questions or want him to speak to those, he's certainly available to do that. This has a hearing on Tuesday morning at 9:30 in front of the Senate Local Government Committee. It was introduced by Senator Mike Thompson. Be happy to stand for any questions. Again, if we're going to submit any view on this, it would need, any legislative testimony would need to be by Monday morning. I can't say I have a strong take either one way or another, but any questions, concerns?
Well, let's see if Scott has a strong take either way or the other. What are your thoughts on this?
Sure. Well, after a cursory review, I think my concerns are, number one, that it would limit the local government's ability to designate what land uses are appropriate or inappropriate with a property. But with that said, as Justin indicated, most zoning changes that we see are initiated by the property owner. But I think there are some instances where this could hamper a local government's ability to better match the zoning to what a neighborhood is or what it wants to be. For instance, in the city of Wichita, there have been multiple neighborhood rezonings that have taken place after a neighborhood plan. An example of those has been Midtown neighborhood, where the entire neighborhood pretty much was zoned B multifamily, so it could allow high rises of residential towers. Well, the market simply isn't there. So what would happen is that it would allow incrementally different uses would pop up, and the neighborhood residents were pretty shocked about it, and they desired to have a rezoning. And ultimately we did after the neighborhood plan to bring that zoning down to TF3 or SF5 so that they would receive announcements if something more intensive was going to go in. A similar example would be McAdams neighborhood. Another example that's more on the commerce side is an entire corridor of Douglas Avenue was rezoned to CBD simply because there were so many rezonings that were coming in on a case-by-case basis that it really, the market supported CBD, and that's what the city of Wichita ultimately did, was to rezone an entire corridor to that.
So on the zoning side, when we hear zoning, it's typically in unincorporated areas of Sedgwick County, but I can see how this doesn't impact our purview in unincorporated, but it significantly does Wichita, upzoning, downzoning, things of that sort. Are they going to weigh in on this? Do you know?
I don't know yet. I need to do some coordination with them. I'll tell you what really sticks out to me is that there's on line 13 upzoning or downzoning revision of the existing regulation and effects, and then on to 14 specific property. Well, specific property is not identified. Is it properties? Or is it multiple properties? Is it a singular property? That's one thing that I really am curious about.
Well, any questions on our end? Commissioner Dennis?
Well, thank you. And I understand your concerns, but I think it's more powerful if we put in a joint rather than city and county, because all of our zoning is joint, comprehensive planning is joint. So I really like to know what the city is doing before we do anything, because it really has a fairly small effect on us, but a big effect on the city.
Yeah.
If it's okay, I guess what I could do is I can reach out to the city and coordinate with them and see what their response or thoughts are on it. And then coordinate with Justin and Tim and folks from the manager's office.
I would be in favor of that. Any objections to that? Okay.
And have Jason communicate with Marley Carpenter. Well, yeah, to make sure everybody's on the same page, if you will.
Thank you, Commissioner Stein. Anything else?
Very good. Okay, anything else that needs to come before us for agenda review? All good, Tim? Appreciate you, bud. Okay, everybody have a good weekend. We are adjourned.